recent days. Kevin Myers wrote a column for the Irish and online editions of the Sunday Times, suggesting two female presenters at the BBC earned high salaries because they were Jewish. The column, titled "Sorry Ladies, Equal Pay Has to Be Earned," followed criticism that the BBC is paying its male stars more than its female ones. Commenting that two of the best paid female presenters, I should say, Claudia Winkleman and Vanessa Feltz, were Jewish, Kevin Myers wrote, and I quote, "Good for them. Jews are not generally noted for their insistence on selling their talent for the lowest possible price, which is the most useful measure there is of inveterate, lost-with-all-hands stupidity." He has since been accused of being anti-Semitic and misogynistic, and he has been sacked by that paper, and the article was removed from the online editions. Kevin joins me now. Good morning.
Good morning, Emma.
Do you believe that Jews have special powers which earn them higher salaries?
First of all, let me say I have to offer an apology to Claudia and Vanessa, an unconditional and absolute apology, not out of self-interest, because I have no self-interest left anymore. My career is in ruins and my reputation is in tatters. But I just want to say on the record that I owe them an apology and I give them an apology. I am a great admirer of Jews. The Jewish Representative Council would not have come out so forthright in my defence the other day if they thought for 1 second I was anti-Semitic. Please don't presume knowledge. Let me just explain. Yeah. You're talking about a council in Ireland. Yes? Yes, that's
You're not talking about the Board of Deputies, which represents all Jews across the UK.
Being critical of me, but obviously you're going to come to that.
I'm just clarifying what you're saying.
Okay, fine. Okay, let me go back to the question, which I'm not going to avoid. I admire Jewish culture enormously. I admire the fact that Jews make the most of what they are, intellectually and morally.
They make the most of what they are, okay.
Sorry?
They make the most of what they are.
Their characteristics, and I wish I had...
I'm sorry, do most people not make the most of what they are?
I feel that it's not part of our culture. I come
what
from
culture
an Irish
are
Catholic
you?
background. Sorry, Emma, I am on air to try to explain my position. If you interrupt me, I can't do that.
I don't understand what culture you are. You're making a lot of assumed knowledge, that's all.
Well, maybe I am, but you are interrupting me a lot. And, I have been the subject of a huge internet campaign, and this is the first time I have appeared on British radio to explain my position. And I think because I have been the subject of a campaign in which I have been thoroughly misrepresented, I should be allowed to explain my position, without an interruption.
I will interrupt where there needs clarification. Why don't we proceed on that basis?
Okay, fine, but that interruption, the clarification might be about what I'm about to offer when you interrupt me.
Do continue.
Now, as I say, I think that the Jewish people have a tradition of exploring their talents and making the most of them, and these are not confined to financial acumen, or it's in the entire range of human endeavor. It's why so many musicians around the world, from which you can expect to make very little money for the most part, are Jewish. This requires huge amounts of hard work. A good musician will have done thousands and thousands of hours of practice for very little financial return, but it is an intellectual and moral endeavor for musicians. And across the world, mathematicians, chess players, and bankers. And I'm more than happy to deal with the role of Jews in bankers in banking, because the primary currency of banking is not money. It's honesty, reliability, and integrity. And unless you have those characteristics as a bank, you will not survive. And one of the reasons why the great banks of the world that have survived, so many of them are Jewish, is because they exhibit these characteristics: honesty, reliability, and integrity.
What evidence do you have that Jews have special powers and a tradition of exploiting their talents more than other groups?
Simply because of the success of Jews in so many areas of life. You don't need to...
There are also a huge number of Jews living in poverty around the world.
Yeah, I wasn't talking about that. There's no doubt there have to be Jews living in poverty. That's the Jews are human beings, so there are bound to be Jews who are living in poverty. But if you look at that. Just before I came on air, I tried to get online to find the number of Jews who've won Nobel Prizes, and unfortunately my broadband has gone down, so I wasn't able to find out. But it's
That's
disproportionate. And Jews don't get Nobel Prizes because there's favoritism in Norway and Sweden towards them, or because the committee is Jewish. It's because they have distinguished themselves in so many walks of life. This is a characteristic of Jewish people.
And let me ask you then,
it's an admirable characteristic.
You say it's an admirable characteristic, and yet it's a slur. It's a well-known trope to link Jews' ability to either make money or extract money from people. It's the same sort of evidence, and it's the same sort of lines that Hitler used to use, that Shakespeare used when writing Shylock's character, that Goebbels relied on when creating caricatures of Jews. So if you were trying to compliment Vanessa Feltz, you pretty much failed comprehensively. Could I play you her reaction?
Yes, by all means.
So obviously racist. It is actually surprisingly hurtful. I would have thought that after all these years I'd be kind of pretty much immune or used to it, and that's not at all how I felt. I felt extremely upset.
So if she feels extremely upset and she says what you wrote was so obviously racist, how on earth can you try and spin it into a compliment?
No, it was intended as a compliment, and I wouldn't even allow the thought that it was intended as an insult. It was intended as a compliment. I do understand she didn't get it.
So it's Vanessa's fault?
Sorry, what did you say?
It's Vanessa's fault?
No, it's not. I understand why she didn't get it, but because I just said I understand why she didn't get it. It's not her fault.
But you stand by what you say, because you've just defended it.
Yeah, you see, as you already know, that I am the subject of an enormous amount of internet hatred, and it's perhaps a little bit easy to cross-examine me as if I was a villain. I have no career left, and I have no reputation, and you can actually add to the position I'm in and make it worse if you want. I was brought on air to elucidate my position, which is already defined by the Jewish Representative Council of Ireland. They have defended me as a friend of Jews.
Well, the Sunday Times haven't.
Say that again?
The Sunday Times haven't.
The Sunday Times didn't give me an opportunity to explain myself, and they sacked me, almost without notice on Sunday morning.
Kevin, they gave you the best part of 1,000 words to express yourself, and you don't sound like you are actually going back on what you said about Jews and money.
I've already apologized.
No, an apology is different. Apology, and sorry, no, you said I shouldn't interrupt you. Let me just make this point. It is one of my personal pet hates when people apologise for a hatred and then move on to justify...
No, I don't justify.
Move on to justify why they put that point out there in the first place. The reality is you've come on this radio programme to apologise. There is interest in you doing that. You have then gone on to accuse the people who have said what they have said about you since that article of them being some part of, a campaign against you. And then you have gone on to say you tried to Google how many Jews won Nobel Peace Prizes and explain why Jews have a tradition of exploiting their talent and making the most of what they have. It does not sound like your apology is for what you wrote.
I thought I was going to be on air to discuss, you just given me a sermon.
I actually explained what you just said back to me. I actually explained what you just said back to me.
No, I didn't. I mean, you made a number of accusations against me there, which I didn't interrupt you for. If I haven't made it plain, I will make it plain. I retract everything I said. I apologize for it. I have not justified it. You used that word, justify. I tried to explain it. There is no justification for it. But I will explain the background in this sense, that in Ireland, and this is why it passed through the Irish editors, and Irish Jews understand this, we tend not to have the problems of anti-Semitism that exist elsewhere. So that the normal kind of defensive shields didn't come into operation. But I am to blame for this. I am the master of my soul. I am the author of my own misfortunes. I offer no justification for this. It happened, and my career is over as a consequence. Now, I bitterly regret any offence that I caused. I do not offer spurious justification for what I've said. You know, it offended people, and I apologize, and I make no justification for what I have said, and I've accepted full responsibility for it. What I was attempting to do was to explain to you how I am not an anti-Semite, and how I do express admiration for the Jewish tradition, and have done often enough, which is why the Jewish Representative Council came out so thoroughly in my support.
They also said they could understand why people would find what you'd written in that column wrong and anti-Semitic.
Yes, that's right. And I didn't deny that.
And what sort of mood were you in when you were writing that article? I always love, I love sort of understanding it.
Yeah, I have a number of errors of failings as a journalist, and one of them is the throwaway aside. You will have identified that kind of throwaway aside in the clip that you just quoted. Now, sometimes it works, and sometimes it doesn't, and it catastrophically didn't work on this occasion.
A bit like the aside where you said, with regards to the actual issue you were writing about, before you decided to comment on the religion of two of the high-paid female stars here at the BBC, a bit like the aside where you said men usually work harder, get sick less frequently, and seldom get pregnant.
And seldom get pregnant is exactly the point. Now, you see, I hoped not to be taken too seriously there.
No, I was just giving another example of your asides.
This is a characteristic I have, which people sometimes like and sometimes don't like. The problem is, I'm a very poor judge of my own work, and a very poor judge of the quality of what I do. And sometimes, very often, I look back on something I've written, I said, that's wrong, that doesn't work, and so on and so forth. But at the time, I don't. But, Emma, throughout this, I do not disclaim the responsibility for what I have done. I alone am answerable for what I have done, and it's caused everyone a great deal of unhappiness, and I bitterly regret that.
Presumably you think I have some special powers as a Jewish broadcaster to get paid.
Presumably the signal faded there. Presumably
you may think I have some special powers as a Jewish broadcaster to get paid better than my colleagues who aren't of the same faith.
I didn't know you were Jewish, and I don't have any opinion about how much you earn. So it's not an issue whether you're Jewish or not. It doesn't enter my head.
Well, it entered your head about 5 days ago when you filed your column.
So, I didn't catch that.
It entered your head about 5 days ago when you filed your column.
Yeah, that's a good question, and that's a good. To which there is no particular answer. What I did was
there's no particular answer.
When I was preparing the article, I Googled the various people, and I came across the fact that these two women were Jewish. But I didn't do it out of anti-Semitism. It's very difficult perhaps to understand. It's out of an esteem for the way that Jewish people behave, that maximize your potential. Nobody else is going to do it for you. It's something that you have to do yourself. This is true for us all. And it is characteristic of the Jewish tradition. You must maximize yourself. Maximize yourself in all ways, as intellectually and morally.
Well, as a member of that Jewish tradition, I can tell you that's not what you're taught in synagogue or schools. So I'll just tell you now that I wasn't taught as a 12-year-old sitting in Sunday school, Jewish Sunday school, to go out and earn as much money as possible and maximise my potential, to use your phrase. I was told to learn.
I mentioned money.
You said maximise my potential, and I was taught
yourself as you are as a broadcaster. Do the best you can. Now,
okay, Kevin, we're nearly
an overall culture.
Kevin.
I'm not talking about how would you teach that in Talmudic school? You wouldn't. That just wouldn't be part of it. It's a cultural characteristic that perhaps escapes definition.
Well, thank you for
things that is a characteristic of Jewish people, that they do their best, and it's something to be esteemed and to be praised. And I certainly would esteem it and praise it.
Thank you very much for trying to characterise something that you perceive within the Jewish culture. You've, of course, also been criticised. Our time's really up, to be honest, but you were criticised for an article you wrote in 2009 in which you said there was no Holocaust.
That's a headline.
And 6 million Jews were not murdered by the Third Reich. These two statements of mine are irrefutable truths.
No, you shouldn't have thrown that in the end. That entire article was a justification for an explanation of the fact that a Holocaust existed, but one word doesn't cover it all. One word doesn't explain the machine gunning of thousands of Jews in pits, the burning alive of Jews in their synagogues, of Jews being flogged to death on death marches across Eastern Europe, of Jews being worked to death in Nazi camps in the Harz Mountains. No single word explains that atrocity, that greatest atrocity in European history. And that headline was not written by me, and I don't know how it was created on the internet. It was created, but the Jewish Council of Ireland, in their statement, said that I have written more about the genocide and the final solution than any other journalist in recent decades. And I've been writing about this for 30 years. That headline misrepresented me totally, as the Jewish Representative Council said. That is not what Kevin Myers is. Kevin Myers is a friend of Jews who's written about the Holocaust, as the reality of the Holocaust. It's not just about Auschwitz. It was a horror that reached from France through to halfway across Central Europe. And it consisted of atrocities of many varieties, not just Auschwitz. Brutalities and tortures of unspeakable depravity. Now, I've written about that for 30 years, and I have this
given you
across the internet,
which I've given you
thrown at the end of an interview,
which I have given you a full right to reply on, as it was part of the criticism, which is why I raised it and wanted to hear what you had to say, Kevin.
Now you know.
Kevin, can I ask, what are you going to do now?
I don't know. As I've said to you at the outset, my reputation is in tatters, and I have no career.
Well, what else do you do besides writing that column? I genuinely don't know.
Well, how could you possibly know me? That was my primary journalistic source. I have to tell you that an awful lot of Irish people know who I am, and obviously there's no reason why you should know me. And they understand my position, and they sympathise with me. They know I'm not an anti-Semite.
How do you feel, though, that even if, as you say, unwittingly, you have publicised again a very well-worn trope about Jews and money?
I regret it greatly, because it's not about Jews and money. It's about, as I said to you before, it's about maximising your potential. But I regret it because it confuses issues. It makes people think that these people, the two women I'm talking about, are about money. It's not about money. It's about what we should all be doing. It's about maximising your potential, economically, culturally, physically, in every sense. And that's a characteristic that I have, perhaps you haven't, identified amongst Jews, and I admire it. And I wish I were more like Jews than I am. I wish I were as hard-working as many Jews that I know are, and so on and so forth. These are characteristics to be admired and emulated.
Lots of Jews aren't hard-working. Lots of Jews don't have a lot of money. So I think if you try and stereotype a group of people by joined characteristics, that in itself is highly problematic.
It is a problem. Like, if you heard the news, the sports news just before I came on air, there was stuff from Epsom, I think, from half the names that were mentioned were Irish. They were trainers or Irish jockeys. And that's what happens to us all. We all have kind of simplifications where you have a sort of stereotype, and if the stereotype isn't nasty, if it's not offensive, then it's not bad. You know, and it's simply the truth that the Irish are preeminent in the horse racing world. They're a very small nation, and lots of jockeys and lots of trainers.
We're going to have to leave it there, Kevin.
Thank you, Emma.
Thank you very much for coming on the programme. It's Kevin Myers there, who wrote that column. Many of you are getting in touch with your examples of casual prejudice, or when people have written something you still didn't really think that was something you'd still see in print, perhaps like Kevin's column, which he has apologised for. In the next hour,